Have you ever wanted to fly for miles over breathtaking landscapes? What if I told you that you can do it even if you are just starting out as a paragliding pilot? Welcome to the Paragliding XC Stories. In this story, we'll take a look at one of the best places to learn cross-country paragliding in the mountains. We'll be flying a short but very scenic route that offers not only magnificent landscapes but also a great playground to learn and improve your XC skills. You'll get to know the well-known Stubai Glacier route, and you'll also see how to tackle the challenges you'll face in every XC flight. If you want to attend the Stubai Cup Paragliding Festival, which typically takes place every year in the Stubai Valley, you can certainly try this route then. You can complete this adventure in just 2 or 3 hours, and you can fly it on any wing, including ENA with a seating harness. No pro equipment required. We'll be covering a lot of things today, including the first climb after takeoff, using the ridges to fly straight, climbing to the cloud base but avoiding clouds, flying valley crossings, planning your arrival on the other valley side, climbing in somewhat difficult areas, paying attention to the valley wind, understanding the terrain and avoiding the lee sides, employing your risk management for deciding how far to go into areas with limited landing options, keeping track of restricted airspace, thermaling in an efficient way and avoiding thermaling altogether, resisting the temptation to land early and making your flight bigger instead, working with weak lift, making your flight longer than your friends, spending the remaining altitude on something useful, and finally landing in moderate valley winds. That's a lot to cover, isn't it? It might seem a bit overwhelming at first, but don't be afraid to jump in. Just start small and take it one step at a time. Let's quickly run through the route we'll be flying today. The Stubai Valley has 2 official flying sites, Elfa and Kreuzjoch, also known as Schlick. We take off at Kreuzjoch and follow the ridges towards the main divide of the Alps. The light green route is a great option if you are looking for an easy flight. The route marked in darker green is also pretty straightforward, but think about the valley wind. At this point you should decide whether you are ready for a little challenge. You can always turn around here if you need to. The yellow part is not complicated, but it's important to make sure you don't sink too low. The last orange section requires more attention because of the wind and the terrain, so it's something you should only do if the conditions are good. Flying this route can be quite challenging, so I'd suggest flying back instead. You can cross over to the other side of the valley or continue here. We set our northern turn point before reaching the restricted airspace, and we land smiling from ear to ear. This triangle is about 50 kilometers and will take 2 to 3 hours to fly. You can always shorten the route if you want. If you could avoid landing on random fields in the valley, that would be great. The local farmers aren't always too happy when huge crowds land on their property, but remember, you are always allowed to do emergency landings though. Be kind and avoid unnecessary stress for the people who live there. Once we are up in the air, our first objective is to climb over the ridge we took off from. Then we use this ridge to get to our first valley crossing. So, which side of the ridge would you choose? I'd say it's a good idea to look at the clouds. Sometimes it's better to shift your course slightly to the left or right. It also depends on how high you are above the ridge. Just experiment with different approaches. This is it. Make it to cloud base. The higher you go, the better. Now, looking at the other valley side, where would you fly to and why? Which of these areas would you choose? This is a typical example of how the thermals could work here. However, the higher you arrive, the better. There is often quite a noticeable valley wind here that makes these thermals a bit difficult to climb in. This whole area usually needs a bit more attention. It's not particularly challenging, but it often tends to be slow going and requires a bit of patience. If you can't make any height here, you can safely glide down to the official landing area for the Elfa takeoff. Don't sink too low here and avoid flying low further south. It will be very difficult or even impossible to climb there in the valley wind. It's important to know which way the wind is coming from and to be aware of any potential lee sides here on the slopes. The wind direction can change depending on the valley wind, the weather and the thermic conditions. Where would you look for a thermal here? Yes, in the mountains, the most promising thermal triggers are found near the spines and summits. What's your approach to this area? My advice is not to fly into this area at all, especially not low. It can be tricky to get out. Instead, get directly to this ridge. After this point, the landscape gets a bit more challenging and the landing options are limited. The valley becomes quite narrow. What does this mean for us? You are right, there will be more wind down there. As long as you stay high, it's not a problem. It's quite easy to stay high here. But you have to decide. If you are not sure, turn around. If you are planning to fly further, you can take some time to practice using the slope lift to fly straight. Be careful, don't sink too low. The thermals here are usually pretty strong, so it's a good idea to keep an eye on your height. Don't enter the restricted airspace that starts at flight level 125. Use big ears or even a spiral dive if you need to descend. This part of the route is probably the most beautiful. You'll get to enjoy a breathtaking view of the main ridge of the Alps and the stunning alpine landscapes. After this point, there are no landings down there, so only fly further south if you can climb high, the air feels lifty and the wind isn't too strong. As you can see, sometimes you don't need to thermal at all. It's time to head back. You'll be flying against the valley wind here, so it's important not to sink too low. Get to the slopes and gain enough altitude so you don't end up stuck in the narrow valley below. It might be a good idea to spend a bit more time in the thermals. In this area, staying up high is the best way to stay safe. But remember, there's an airspace starting at flight level 125, so don't climb too high. When you get to the summit, climb to cloud base. This will save you from the valley wind when you continue. So, should you stay on this side of the valley or cross to the other side? It's up to you, but if there's enough sun at the slopes on the other side, crossing might be a good option. Just make sure you cross high enough so you don't get caught in the valley wind. If you stay on this side of the valley, try to get above this summit. It's much easier to thermal here than on the slopes to the north. Now, this is where you'd land after taking off on the Alpha, so you might be tempted to do so. If you are feeling tired, you can always land. You should be able to reach the landing from here. Ready for a bit more adventure? Let's head back to the Kreuzjoch takeoff and even fly a bit beyond. Here's an example of why it's important to keep an eye on what's going on around you. I'm climbing in a thermal, but I'm starting to notice that a cloud has formed and is growing really fast in this area. It means there is a really strong thermal here, so we can use it. I don't climb more to avoid getting into the clouds. I fly right into the area where I think the thermal is. Take a look at my Vario now. At this point, you could fly over the takeoff and extend your flight to these slopes. But these peaks are in a restricted airspace, so you can't fly close to them. You'll have to turn around earlier. As an alternative, you could cross to the other side. Depending on the wind, you can find good thermals here. Unfortunately, the clouds are covering all the slopes today, so we only have a weak thermal over the valley. If you want to make your flight even longer, you can fly a bit more north. Keep in mind, there's a restricted airspace in front of us, so don't enter it. You could glide down to the landing, but if you get back to the takeoff first, you'll get the most kilometers of the route we just completed. Use the valley wind and climb high over the ridge. As you fly over the takeoff, be proud of yourself for achieving an absolutely perfectly closed XC triangle. Nice work! We've got a plenty of altitude. What's the next move? If you just want to fly for a while longer, you can either continue along these slopes or cross to the other side. If you are already planning to land, use the remaining altitude to practice some maneuvers. The choice is yours. Fly some wing overs, dolphins, practice big ears, spiral dives, whatever you want. Make use of the height to improve your skills and control of the wing, and don't just glide down. Alright, we are here, the landing field. The flight was fairly short, but we got in a lot of practice and enjoyed the sightseeing tour over the beautiful mountains. Hope you enjoyed it as much as I did and maybe even learned something new. If you have any questions or just want to share your experience, feel free to join my Telegram group. I also invite you to check out other videos from my channel. You might find some of them useful. And as usual, fly safe and see you in the next story.